Another wrenching day of testimony in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. Today began with George Floyd's girlfriend painting a picture of the humanity of the man, focusing on his life rather than his final moments that have, of course, dominated the trial so far. Courtney Ross telling the jury how she met George Floyd when he worked as a security guard at the Salvation Army. Ross telling the jury that Floyd was a good father and talking about the deep impact of the death of his own mother.
He said, well, can I pray with you? I thought I was so tired. We had been through so much, my sons and I. And this kind person just to come up to me and say, can I pray with you? When I felt alone in this lobby, it was so sweet. I would call Mama's boy. I could tell from the minute I met him. And when he came back from Houston, he seemed kind of like a shell of himself. Like he was broken.
You'll recall George Floyd on video calling out for his mama and his children as he was dying. Courtney Ross also told the jury that drug use was a part of their relationship, opioid addiction, a story that so many Americans and so many families can identify with.
Both Floyd and I, our story, it's a classic story of how many people get addicted to opioids. We both suffered from chronic pain. Mine was in my neck and his was in his back. We both had prescriptions. But after prescriptions that were filled and we got addicted and tried really hard to break that addiction many times.
Courtney Ross described how injuries and his desire to still be physically active led George Floyd to pain pills. The defense referencing a time when George Floyd overdosed and was hospitalized and steering Courtney Ross toward their use of other, stronger pills that she says made her jittery and kept her up all night. The defense also pushed Courtney Ross to confirm that George Floyd illegally bought stronger pills again days before his death under Derek Chauvin's knee.
And when you took him to the hospital, did you notice foam coming from his mouth?
I noticed like some kind of foam building in the corners of his mouth, kind of
like
dry.
A dry white substance. Do you recall telling the FBI that when you had that, you felt like you were going to die?
I don't remember saying that.
Do you recall telling the FBI that there would be times that he would just be up and bouncing around, and then there would be times that he would be like unintelligible?
I don't recall that, but...
Would you disagree if I said that in the transcript? That's
no, I wouldn't disagree with that.
The defense appearing to argue that the substances in Floyd's body contributed to his death and that his behavior necessitated the use of force to restrain him, trying to sway the jury there. The next witness was a paramedic who says when he arrived, there were multiple police officers on top of George Floyd. He says Floyd did not appear to be moving at all. No struggle at all. They tried to revive him in the ambulance using all the tools at their disposal, but by that time, the paramedic says it was too late. Joining me now is NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who is in Minneapolis, former Assistant U.S. Attorney Jimmy Hodge, and civil rights attorney and former prosecutor David Henderson. Everybody, welcome. So, Gabe, you've been following and covering this trial for us since the very beginning. You were there in the moments, in the days after This happened in Minneapolis over a year ago, or about a year ago. Today, the defense almost was putting George Floyd on trial, talking about his addiction, talking about the need to restrain him. I know you're not inside the courtroom because of the pandemic restrictions, but from the notes you're getting from the reporters who are there, how does that seem to be playing with the jury?
Well, Katie, it is hard to tell exactly how it's playing because of COVID restrictions, they're all wearing masks. But we did get a pool report a short time ago that talked about how at least one of the jurors, when he was listening to Courtney Ross's testimony, actually furrowed his brow, put one of his hands near his face, and seemingly was emotional. And at other points during her testimony, the jurors were taking notes. Also, towards the end of her testimony when she described how in March, just 2 weeks before Floyd's death, his behavior seemingly changed. So they also took notes during that. But what was interesting about Courtney Ross is that, unlike some of the other witnesses, she was really seeming to make an effort to establish some sort of connections with the jurors. She would make more eye contact. If you notice in the room, she would, kind of smile or perhaps crack jokes, talked about how it was a classic story, and, really talked fondly about when she met George Floyd back in 2017 when he worked at the Salvation Army. And then, Katie, if we were all watching that same testimony, it almost came as a shock very early on in her testimony when the prosecutor asked her to describe when she met George Floyd. That emotion really came on suddenly, and you have to wonder what effect that had on the jurors that were watching.
And Gabe, I understand the Floyd family has responded to the questioning today and some of the testimony, and then you talked to George Floyd's brother as well. What can you tell us?
Yes. Well, look, from the beginning of this trial, well before this trial, the Floyd family has been making the point that they believe the defense does not have the facts on their side, so they will focus, they believe, on character assassination. But shortly after Courtney Ross's testimony this morning, Ben Crump and Tony Ramanucci, two of the attorneys representing the Floyd family, put out a statement that said, in part, tens of thousands of Americans struggle with self-medication and opioid abuse and are treated with dignity, respect, and support, not brutality. Now, I did speak with Philonise Floyd, as you mentioned. He was the lone family member inside the court this morning, but we spoke with him and other family members as they walked into court this morning. Take a listen.
Everything is painful and agony, the same thing that the witnesses had to go through. They're shell shocked for the future. They'll always have this in their mindset. They will never be able to get this out, especially those minors. There's no justification why a person should put their knee and all of their weight on a man's neck until they pass. He was tortured to death. You clearly seen that in the video. There's no reason that he shouldn't be convicted.
This testimony obviously affecting the Floyd family, Katie, and yesterday after I spoke with you, is that's when the prosecution played those 4 body cameras in succession that the Floyd family again had to watch over and over and over and over again, multiple times, these videos being played in court. As you heard, they're obviously very difficult on Philonise Floyd and the other family members, but it's something that they feel has to be shown. Katie?
Jimmy, let's talk about strategy here. Obviously, the defense is trying to get Derek Chauvin off. They're trying to prove that he was not the cause of George Floyd's death, and they're trying to build up this case that George Floyd was under the influence of drugs, and that was the contributing factor to his death. I wonder, though, what is the threshold for how Derek Chauvin's knee comes into play? Is it just a contributing factor to his death that's necessary, or does the prosecution need to prove it is the entire reason for George Floyd's death?
Oh, that's a great question, Katie. Causation is definitely going to be the hardest issue for the prosecution to overcome. I think ultimately that's why this trial will come to the battle of the experts. You know, we already heard in the opening statement, and we know from the list of witnesses, there are going to be a bunch of doctors who will opine about what exactly caused the death. So I do think that is going to be the biggest hurdle, and especially to get that top charge. I do want to go back to your point, though, about the defense strategy, which is really centered around dangerousness and trying to point not just Mr. Floyd, but in their cross-examination of witnesses and their opening statement, dangerousness of the bystanders. And it's just not lost that sort of intimation that because he was a Black man, because he happened to be tall, that just made him dangerous. That the crowd, which we've seen from the pictures and the screenshots, wasn't a lot of people. I think the number is 12, 4 of whom were so young that they testified off camera, but yet, you know, through cross-examination in their opening statement, trying to point the crowd as so dangerous. So this is sort of trying to say that dangerousness attaches to Black skin has real deep historic connotations. It is part of how we ended up in this situation with Mr. Floyd's untimely death. And I think these racial dynamics of dangerousness being associated with Black skin is something we're going to continue, unfortunately, to have to see throughout the trial.
So, David, it seems that the prosecution, has anticipated that strategy from the defense to paint George Floyd as a dangerous person who was an addict. Given, though, the state of this country and the way that we perceive addiction today compared to the way we used to perceive addiction, the way that so many different American families from all walks of life deal with opioid addiction within their own families, I wonder, could this strategy to paint him as a drug addict who was dangerous backfire? Courtney Ross this morning talked about why he was on opioids, why she was on opioids, and how they struggled to get off of them.
So this is a good example, Katie, of where it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to draw the line between watching this trial as a lawyer and watching this trial as a person. I think it is wrong to be bringing up George Floyd's history with drug use. And having prosecuted a number of sexual assault crimes, I know the law recognizes in other contexts the victim's history is irrelevant because the message is that somehow George Floyd brought this on himself. I find that deeply offensive. At the same time, I have to recognize that this approach does tend to work, and we see it in every case. For example, Amber Geiger shot and killed Botham Jean in his own apartment in Dallas, Texas. And then suddenly you see information being released about marijuana being found in his apartment. The reason they're doing it is because character assassination is effective. It should simply be put a stop to at the same time.
David Henderson, Jimmy Hodge, both of you, thank you so much. And thank you for sticking around with us throughout the hour.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.